Good afternoon, it's Joyful Hermit. Get my little heat pack from around my neck. Um, I think this is an important topic for us, and it has to do with being disabled. Many of the people who come on this site are disabled and or suffering something, emotional, mental, or physical, or combination therein, or will or have. Everyone will at some point. So maybe it's sort of good. These thoughts have come up thanks to a viewer and just my own life situation lately that has been really emotional because I've had to face things. God has had me have to face and accept and adapt to more. In physical therapy this morning, I told this physical therapist some and just how horrible my neck and my hands and arms are in the night and in the morning for whatever reason. Well, my neck is bad. He goes, "Oh, is it time to go see Dr. Little?" That's the neurosurgeon. I said, "He doesn't want to operate unless it becomes life-threatening." And I said, "It will greatly hinder me. My neck will be fused. It's a very intricate and serious, very involved neck surgery that is that severe. A year ago, he said it needs it now, but too risky. And, you have to be able to turn your head to drive, and I don't have a support network to that degree. And likely can't get one. It's hard for disabled people. And that's part of the discussion. So anyway, he did put me in traction. And it hurt, and it felt good to hurt. It was the kind of hurt that I was like, oh, good. I said, even just keep going with it and pull my head off. I said, be my guest. We laughed. But I mentioned this topic to him, too, just from the perspective of disabled people and things we need to learn. And I think of my mom, she used to say, buck up. And get some gumption. But buck up. Disabled people, I think, are chosen by God for whatever disability they've been given or happens in life. It may seem like an accident, but I know from the car accident back in 1984, 2 weeks before, even maybe 12 days before or less, I remember where I was standing and specifically sensed my life, my marriage, even my career. It was not going in a direction that God wanted, that was right. I didn't know why, but I just prayed this heartfelt little line, God, just do with me whatever you will. And that accident and the pain and then the outflow within 3 weeks, the husband said he didn't want to be married anymore and opened up about these lives he had lived in our marriage. Not all of them. He said he was going to start a new era of honesty, but that's impossible for a sociopath. But he did confess to a couple, or one that I asked about, and the other one he would have had I gone back to the beginning and started through. At least 3 or 4 different times that I sensed he was having an affair. But the one woman, I was pretty darn sure, and he did say yes. Oh, well, I guess he did too. He was with some woman then, going off with her, and that he had first told me he did even after he confessed all this. They can't help themselves. Said he had to go away for the weekend. He was just going to get a hotel and think things through, sort through the marriage and what he wanted to do, and and it was my mother. I don't know how they called on Saturday morning like they usually do, and unusually asked, well, where's Steve? And I broke down and said, it was so painful. I couldn't not. I said, well, he's thinking things through in a hotel. And of course, they were stunned. My mother said, he's with a woman. She said, She said, how can you be so naive? And I said, well, part of his issues was that he had admitted to a couple already, and one that he. So anyway, we get ourselves into things, and we can be our own worst enemies. But the accident had happened 3 weeks prior, and my neck I had a disc in my neck that was bulging, and my lumbar. But it really wasn't anything as severe as it became. But I was sore and stiff and had to wear a cervical collar, and my back hurt from then on. And I had a headache from then on, from August 22nd of 84 on. And but that was enough to cause the husband 3 weeks later to say he didn't want to be married anymore. It was the tipping point. The fun of sneaking around on me, that was the sociopaths like that, and narcissists. The sociopaths like the intrigue of it, and to see just how far they can go and get away with it. It's a game. But I wasn't fair game anymore. I was injured. That really threw things off. I wasn't going to be worth it. So he wanted out. That was the tipping point. He was getting out. That did him over. And so that's why I mentioned to a family member the other day in a text, you have been helping and supportive, doing things for me, took care of yourself and your brother, and helped with your older sister, doing all these things, going on 40 years now. It'll be 40 years this August 22nd. She was 6, and then the year before, she was 5. Their dad wasn't even with us the year before. He'd come home, started out every weekend, then every other weekend, and he even had an affair during that time. Brought a woman's underwear home with his laundry. And I knew he had this fantastical story. He was a school principal in Beverly Hills, how the 8th grade girls had played a trick on him to get him in trouble with his wife, and put their underwear in his bag of dirty clothes in his amazingly unlocked truck in the parking lot. They just happened to know it would be unlocked that day, and that it would be there, and his laundry would be there. So they put this underwear that was certainly women's white underwear, not what 8th grade girls would wear. But by that time, I think I had on my own sold our house, because that was his reason to have us stay back and me continue my year as a media center director and take care of the newborn infant and the 2 little girls. And he would go on to this job where he immediately then has an affair. So with somebody at his school. So, but kept, as it turned out later, kept an affair with one in the previous school, in the district I was still working in. So, that I didn't know about, but I had suspected, but thought that he had stopped. And he kept denying that one. He would deny and deny. But all I thought was keep the family together. I got the house sold on my own. And but then instead of getting us up there, he moved us to some rental place there until the baby got so ill. And after that, I said, this is it. Find us a place. Immediately, he was able to find us a house to rent in the area he lived. So, and where the accident was, less than 4 months later. But he lasted 3 weeks with an injured person, my own husband. And it wasn't snap easy for him to leave. For a narcissist, see, that looks bad. He can look like a real heel to do that. So they tend, it's not taken lightly for a narcissistic sociopath to want a divorce. One of them was that Peterson, forget his first name. his wife, Lacey Peterson, he murdered her, ended up murdering her. He was a narcissistic sociopath. He had some psychopath in him too, but a lot of it was the sociopath. All the lying, the stories, the affair on the side. He wanted to keep the wife, but then it got down to crunch point, where he didn't want the child, so he murdered them both. The baby was maybe a month away from being born. It was in the news back in the early 80s, I think it was. And he's on death row now, the man is, in appeal. But had all kinds of stories and excuses. And if you don't catch on, which it takes a long time to, it can be a while. But for pity's sakes, here was this child, age 5 on, her sister who was 7 on, an infant born who never was around his dad other than about the 4 months that between us getting up there and the accident, and then visitations after the divorce, but they carried the burden, especially the two older girls. But the young one also, when he was went to college, would be 7 years after his next older sister. So he was with me for 7 years while they were at college or out of college. He didn't graduate until they'd been out of college for some time. Graduated from college 7 years later. So he had been with me alone. And I had a terrible pain ordeal. Part of it was a spiritual thing, as I figured out later, and my spiritual dad did also. But it was also suffering, tremendous suffering. And it went on from St. Francis de Sales Day, and it was forewarned about 3 days prior to St. Francis de Sales, that's January 24th, until Easter that year, which was the first week or so of April. And I was in bed, and I had trouble eating. I could not get up. I was like partially, in a way, comatose, not mentally comatose, but bodily, unable to get up. The pain was overwhelming, suffering. And I was in the first parish. They had a religious sister bring me communion every day, which she started to resent. Because she, with someone with pain or some disabilities, you can't tell that the person has it, and they start to doubt. What is you could really get, well, now how long are you going to be in bed? I don't know, sister. Well, you need to just get up. I couldn't. Terrible pain. I couldn't. I had no energy until God allowed. And I said, I'll pray. She said, will you do just that? I'll pray and ask God. I said, I don't know how long this is going to be. I said, usually they're 3 days to up to 2 weeks. It had already gone on like maybe 5 weeks then. But it got so bad at times, my little boy would get off the bus and run back. He would run home. He told me, I could tell he was panting, sweating, run into the house, back to my bedroom, scared I had died. He would be in school worrying that I had died. And then he'd have, and the girls also, they would call. During one of those time periods, I couldn't eat. And the one daughter, the middle child, called from college, please, Mom, please, can't you, try to eat, I don't want you to die, it was terrible. The suffering was terrible. And we could wonder, how could God allow that with these children? But they would get themselves up when they were 6, 7, 8 years old, went through every trauma I went through, all the scary things that their dad would do or hire other people to do. They remember, well, the little one doesn't, but the girls remember the break-ins of this our first rental house that we had, where the police, then the deputies came, sheriffs, and said we had to get out that night. Well, we had to. The door was beaten in. It was totally ransacked. So much stuff was stolen, even some of their things. One daughter's flute was stolen. Jewelry, anything they could get. The TV, the video camera, but that they enjoyed doing videos and then showing them on TV, seeing themselves. So, and we had to try to find places to stay. We didn't know people yet then in the town we moved to. So it just, we sort of wonder, how can these things happen? But they do. And being a disabled person is a difficult situation. People have a hard time with it. We don't show it. We can easily become feeling sorry for ourselves. But my children had to take care of themselves and me and get themselves to activities, or I would be calling around, could you please take my daughter to this or that? And so when we did get back to my hometown in the Midwest, the judge let us out of state, and he saw through the person, the father. He saw through. Not at first in court, but the last few minutes he saw. And off we went, tap, tap, tap. We leave the state. And he could pay more child support if you're such a great dad, because he had a flip out in court in front of the judge. So, we're back in this small town where I had relatives, but even the people in my church who were wonderful people, it was a Lutheran church, they had helped so many times when I would have pain sieges, or when the doctor who went to the church would put me in the hospital to help get on top of the pain for a week. And then the children would be the church people would take the children in. And the children had to just up and pack a little suitcase and off to someone's house. And it was wonderful of the church people to help like that. They would bring in meals. They were so good. But they started to burn out too. So when God started having me have dreams every single night for over a year that I was to move back to my hometown in the Midwest, the church people were feeling relieved, because you're disabled, here's this disabled woman, her family needs to help her. Her aunts and uncles, her cousins in this back home need to. So they were supportive of that. They hated to see me leave because they loved me and loved my children, especially the older ones. But the younger ones and the neighbors, it was hard on them to be taking care of me, plus living their own lives and taking care of their own grandchildren or adult children and their problems. So it's being disabled is a difficult situation. And as I said, I think God chooses the disability and why. And it was one thing for me to have the accident and to have the husband cleared off. God did not want that husband with me. And when the truth started coming out, of course, I had I didn't think it was going to be great staying married, but I was willing to, for the sake of the children and for the vows I had made. But God didn't want it. And I had to accept that there was a reason why God had him leave, have the husband leave. And then when it came to my career, and my back kept getting worse and worse. And then came the surgery. God didn't want me to continue in a career teaching. God wanted me for himself. As a hermit, I'd already had that message. To learn to hibernate. That's how I was going to have to live my life. To learn to hibernate like a bear for protection from the world. So God took the career away. I was permanently disabled, even though it wasn't labeled back then as arachnoiditis. But the surgeon, the orthopedic surgeon, and the family doctor, they all put me through lots of tests. No, she can never work again. Too much pain. I couldn't sit long enough, couldn't stand long enough. And these pain sieges, like I've been in bed since last Friday, except Saturday morning I left to go watch something, and it was too hard on my back standing. So here I am. What is this, Tuesday? So it's been rugged several days of pain. So I've thought through about this, and then I had to be firm and come firm with myself, because through the years and as my children became adults, they worked so hard taking care of me, taking care of themselves. My son experienced a lot of silence and loneliness because his sisters weren't there anymore, and I'd be in bed, knocked out. They used to send a nurse to do injections when I was in the hometown, and I'd be knocked out for 24 to 36 hours because the pain was that bad. It took a lot to knock me out, Demerol and Visceral combined. And he grew up with it though. So he was on his own, get up, fix his breakfast, off to school, get the bus because he went to a nearby city. And then in high school, when he was old enough, he drove himself home. If I was still in a pain seat, he'd do his homework, fix his supper, see if I needed anything. And he also then, when he got to be, I think 15, he was able to get a job lifeguarding at the Y nearby. So Saturday morning, he'd be up and down there at 6 a.m. working. My daughters did the same. One worked in an ophthalmologist office after school and summers and vacations. The other one in first a Walgreens and then a nursing home. They babysat, mowed yards. The one daughter and son had paper routes when they were real little. And because we were always financially struggling. But I did provide them with a very lovely home for the major chunk of time of growing up until I needed that money then to help the girls with college. So I had to move a lot. When I would run out of money, we'd move. So I'd have money then for the son's college, or actually for his high school. He went to a private high school. I won't go into the reasons, but so he could get a better education than what he was going to be earmarked for at the public high school. So there's always reasons behind things, but kids don't necessarily grow up knowing those reasons or remembering. And parents are wise not to tell them everything. So I didn't make a big deal out of how I used up the rest of my money helping the girls with the cash part up front that their college needed every semester. And then I used up the rest of it, the final, I think the first year of the son's college. Then I had to get a parent loan that I paid off for 10 or 12 years. But they had loans. They had good grades. They worked hard. They had scholarships and grants, but also student loans that took them a long time to pay off after they were out. So it wasn't the easiest childhood for them by any means. And I'm sure that I sucked up a lot of attention, not intentionally, but other adults. How's your mother? Oh, how's your mother? Because here's this poor woman, they don't stop to think. the poor children and what it's for them. But the kids took care of me. Not always. When I would be able to, as soon as I could get up, I would get up. But I couldn't go to a lot of their events. And they could tell I would do something, have a party or something, make a special meal, have the volleyball team over. Next day I'd have a pain siege. They were old enough to start realizing. And I did do better when they were out in college. I didn't have cooking to do. Cooking really kills my back. But anyway, so it was rough. And they took care of me. It'll be 40 years this summer, this August 22nd, and 3 weeks after. So that he left, so that the husband left, their father left. So it's over the years, and people would, especially when they were more adult, but they would expect, well, where's your family? Or, well, why don't the kids do this? The kids ought to also do this for you. Well, my mother realized. She sent money to hire someone to come clean the house. Vacuuming would really get my back. I use a shop vac here, and I haven't vacuumed in a long time. Every now and then I'll suck up the little bit of fur from Mercy that comes off. But I can't do I have no carpet vacuuming, especially bad. So, but as adults now, and I think I was buying into it, people, even here when I moved, well, where's your family? The HOA people, when they were on my case last May. Where's your children? They ought to be here helping. They should, I think it's been my son, after college, was up and down and get easily frustrated. And he couldn't handle the crying. Oh, the pain can get bad. You cry. You can't help it. When pain's bad enough, your eyes run. And you're calling out for help. And I went a lot without any medication. A lot of years. It was only maybe a year that I was given injections, or less than a year. That was a pediatrician who took pity. But then he got in trouble, was fearful of it or something, so stopped. Maybe even just 6 months. But when I was in California, the family doctor, who knew us well and knew me before the accident, a neighbor would take me in and he would give me the injections in his office or the ER. I'd be driven home, got in bed right away, and the neighbor would check on the kids. But people get tired. They have their own lives. So here now are my adult children with their families. And they each, amazingly, I think they maybe have thought, if we'd only stayed in California, maybe we would have had, I don't know what they thought they would have had better. But because they have the most amazing careers, having come from small town, or their junior high and high school, and the son all through grade school and high school, and from this small town in the Midwest. So, but they didn't get to go too far to look for colleges. I just made sure that they got in a good one, and I was pretty strong on that it be one that would have connections for them then, for good careers. And the first job the oldest one got was through a recruiter man who looks for jobs for it. She was in the computer field. And within days, he had her a job that paid far more than I was making. It was like over double what I had made just a few years prior. And I had my doctorate. So, they're doing great. But they're high stress jobs. she's way up in something, doing something with Microsoft, and the son is a producer with a major network in New York City, and the other daughter is a pro sports player and had been a college professor. So they're doing great, but people still, why aren't your children helping you? What, and because others think they should, they don't understand what burnout is. And I knew it, but until recently, finally the one said, no one's trying to cut you off, Mom. Well, couple have, but no one's trying to cut you off. We just have our own stressful lives to live. And that was so good to hear, because I have been saying for some time, you got burnout. Don't do anything. Don't worry about it. Don't. Or is this why you're acting this way? It's burnout. You're tired of me. You can't take it. Or your childhood has, the memories are too awful. So really, even having my voice on the phone will trigger the one daughter when she came to help me with my surgery, which was wonderful. And I just had a great time, despite the surgery being a failure, but we didn't know it right then. It was horribly painful, more painful than I think it was supposed to be, because this fibrotic tissue started growing right in the operating room. By 2 weeks, it was 2 inches thick around my knee. But she was, I think, maybe how I lived, my house not finished and all. And it was bad, cluttered and all, with building stuff and tools out. I could not do much the year before. I lost my thyroid and didn't know it till finally got on medication. But I was exhausted, couldn't work, couldn't do much, was in bed most of the time. So I just figured I was in a death decline. So what are you going to do? When you're disabled, you get used to being disabled. And you know that your body, I know with arachnoiditis, it's going to decline, get worse and worse. And you don't like it, but there's no specialists for it. So I just figure and you get used to taking a lot of pain and having a lot of odd things happen. So when I was exhausted all the time, I just finally got a doctor, did blood tests. Oh, your thyroid's gone. Got to be on medicine. And some other things were wrong that then they did miss and discounted. Ended up my kidney had gone into failure. And it went so bad, then it was over months. 5 months later, I was in hospital. Well, you remember I was talking about it. So these things happen, and people don't understand, and even your own kids. Now, that seemed to upset the two. The son has totally cut me off. Totally. Well, it's not that it wasn't that his life is so stressful. He got angry with me, and he couldn't cope much with me from college on, after college. But he'd gotten close with his dad. And however, though, all the memories, and I'm different. I'm a mystic. Weird things happened in the house. The devil was always beating on me, but it comes in temporal bad stuff. Weird things happening in the house and bad things happening that I had to overcome, and the kids with me. So we had a lot of trauma going on. And then the dad, when we lived in California still, he harassed the 5 years I was there. And it got scary at times, pounding on the door. Had to call the police a couple times to get him away. And he was a principal then of prestigious districts, but such a big state, they don't keep track of what these principals are doing. And he was good at his lies and stuff. So presented a good figure. He got me. I didn't think anything. I didn't pick up on the lies for a long, long time in the marriage, and not the affairs totally either, because he's very convincing. They're very adept, narcissistic sociopaths are. So, being disabled, though, is the disabled person's responsibility. God allows us these, and it's so clear to me even all the more now. He allows us these ailments and these disabilities and sufferings because he knows we can take it. He knows we can handle it. We are victim souls of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, chosen for these disabilities in a spiritual sense that is also physical. And God knew my children could handle themselves. And they did. They've done an outstanding job with their lives and also of taking care of me. They are loved by people, many friends, and looked up to, highly regarded among their friends. And so it's a situation, though, where how many years could anyone take high-level suffering in someone they love and then run their own adult lives with their own problems, their own marriages, their own children with their children's problems, their own careers with their career problems, which I didn't have a career. At least I didn't have that going on. I didn't have that problem of things that come up in our careers that are stressful. So I've had a real a wake-up call here from God of my responsibility, and I had just sort of let it go. I would broach the topic and say, well, I think you're burned out. My presence bothers you. You don't seem to even like me. And, oh, no, or would give some comment back. Or even this last weekend, then I got a text, I'm so sorry, I was just very, very tired. Well, yes, probably tired and hard work that she'd done and hadn't done as well as it wanted or whatever, but was very wonderful with other people. But I can tell. I'm the one that can sense things. And I knew, but I can also go into denial. So I wasn't buying it, though. I wasn't buying it. And it was a relief to hear, we're not trying to cut you off. Well, yes, they're having to cut me off to save themselves. They can't take any more. They want to. They wish they could. They feel guilty. I've been in such bad shape, I was having blackouts again. And she had paid me, we split a phone bill. She'd given me a check. I hadn't seen her in about 5 months. But she wrote out a check for my birthday gift, which was generous, that she got me. Told me about these BPC 157 that has miraculously helped my intestines. Gotten the signals going, so they're working, and paid for the first month of it, which is expensive stuff, expensive supplement, plus her part of our phone bill, our phone server, because we're on a family plan together to save money, and so we're in the same area. And I can't find the check. I have total blackout of what I did with it. I know I'd put it in my pocket. Maybe we had wind. Maybe it flew out. Maybe I was getting my keys or a tissue out and it flew out. I don't know. Seems like I have some thought that I had put it here on the bed where I lay here and pay my bills and stuff and handle business. It's not here. I took the bed apart looking for it and my pile of books and different things. And I told her, I said, oh, well, that was frustrating. But then she felt bad that I was in that kind of pain, that I couldn't function. It's not her fault. Not at all. And not to have the guilt either of that. And so she had to cancel the check with her bank and then offered to pay half of the cancellation fee. No, I'm the one that lost it. But I know she feels bad. Here's poor mom. Blackout. Can't remember what happened. I'm on automatic pilot when I get like that. No. We with the disability have to take responsibility for our disability. And it's no different than a spouse who can't handle being married to someone who's disabled. People get burnout. Not everyone is born a Florence Nightingale or an Annie Sullivan or a saint who helps the poor, or wasn't it Catherine of Genoa who nursed, who even one of the saints sucked poison out of a woman's infected breast to help save her life. Not everyone's geared that way to take care of a disabled person. Not over years and not from childhood on. So I had texts. I said, if you ever start feeling guilty, I said, you have done more than ever should have ever needed to. You've done beyond more helping someone with pain. And they're not going to do any more. And I said, I'll just blow it away, anyone who starts in, which people have. And my own self, feeling sorry for myself. And then other people will, well, you mean your children didn't have you over for Christmas? They haven't done this for you? Well, where are your children? Why aren't they? No, they can't. They're burned out. It's too much. Their memories are triggered of a tough and sad childhood. And they don't want to admit it. No one wants to admit that they couldn't take it or that it was hard. They don't want to lay that on top of all my pain. But that's what the disabled person, we pick up that cross. And if we're disabled and someone leaves and divorces us, we have to understand they couldn't take it any longer of handling a disabled marriage. It changes things. I think statistically it's very rare for married couples to remain married for years and years if one of the persons is disabled, especially if they don't know it when they marry. Even this great Johnny Erickson Tata, who was paralyzed from the neck down from age 16, a diving accident. And she's got a radio program and books she's written. Heartrending story. She was blessed to get married. One of her caretakers fell in love with her. Is Tata, forget his first name. And they married, but she's written a book. No one knew about it at the time. But later on she wrote, they nearly divorced. They had serious marriage problems partway through. And he was a caretaker by profession and knew what it was going to entail, but no one really knows. And we are human. How much can anyone take of being with someone who's constant suffering of whatever type, emotional or mental or physical or combinations? It's up to us to buck up, us disabled people. Buck up, understand the reality that we are victim souls of Jesus Christ. He has chosen us to help make reparation for the sins of all time and of the universe or whatever. We are His agents, so to speak. And He chose us because He knew we could do it. And that even if we had self-pity or anger or upset, which I can still probably hear it in my voice. I have some feelings about someone who left 3 weeks after, left with 3 little children and a person injured. Yes, we're human, we have those feelings, but I was in my hospital bed in my house less than 3 years later. I was laid up after that surgery and the death experience and a second surgery that I never recovered from, really. It was ruined me, gave me the arachnoiditis. I was in that hospital bed for 3 months. My parents disrupted their lives to come out and take care of us. And it wasn't easy for them. My mother became depressed. Her friends had to tell her, finally, you've got to do something about this. You're too depressed. You can't be so involved and worried about your daughter's life. You're going to have to let her deal with her disability. You can't. You can't do anything about it. And it was affecting all her friendships. They needed their friendships, my parents did. My mother did. Her social life with her women friends and her study groups and my dad with his Kiwanis Club and golf partners. So it especially affected my mother. It affected my sisters. My mother and dad were helping me so much. And they visited one of them, and it was the first Christmas my children were going to be with me, but they were going to come and visit us then at Christmas. And they were trying to figure out what outfits to buy for my children while they were visiting my sister and her husband and children. And that upset my sister. Well, it's natural. We're human. She felt bad about it. She says, I'm sorry. She said, and I said, no, you're right to say it, to get it out. But she says, I felt like Mom should have been thinking about what to get my children. She was visiting us, not spending that time with us shopping for gifts for your children. And she says, and I understand you've had a terrible thing happen, but I always readily acknowledged. I entered into it. I made my choices. And even though it's very hard to detect a narcissistic sociopath, back then especially, we didn't have Google. I always tell young people, Google personality disorders, check out the person you're with, and then be very firm, very firm if you detect any of these disorders that can be real problems and hard to correct. The person will not correct them. They can't. They're sick. And you can have that empathy, but in the meantime, your life is being destroyed in one sense, in the temporal sense. But Jesus uses us. So more is expected of us. Maybe you're tired of hearing that. To more that is given, to those who are given more. And that means more crosses also, more hardships, more disability, more attacks by the devil, more suffering, more loneliness. Then we can get into, I think of some people, well, at least you have your children. No, I don't. They suffered. They can't do it anymore. They haven't been able to for years, really. And it's been very painful for me more painful, I realized. Last weekend, I realized I can't take it anymore. I can't take it when I get my hopes up and I'm invited and I'm going to see someone I haven't seen in 5 months. And then the person is cold or curt because the image, my being there even triggers what I don't think anyone could overcome. What happens? It becomes psychological and nothing that can really be fixed except just living your life and staying away and praying to be able to forgive the person. They forgive me, but still the memories of what all they went through on top of now, it bothered her that my hands are so painful and my neck. And she was around, not a lot when I had the big surgery 5 years ago this July. She came and she was at the hospital and she went through the trauma of when they kept saying I was being brought to the room. 7 hours later, something's wrong. She knew something was wrong. She found the surgery wing way down in some area of the hospital. They had her come back into ICU because they couldn't keep me breathing. And they needed her to help because they were on overload, to yell at her mother to breathe. And then somehow my drain hose got pulled out and sprayed on her. And that was upset her terribly, to have all this blood and fluid and pus or whatever coming out of my spine all over her. She's not one to handle that well. Who would? And under the circumstances, it was like 2 a.m. She had been waiting there since maybe 2 p.m, during my surgery and then after. And then to see that I was maybe not going to make it right in front of her. So, just the things that happen. And my neck surgery, I'm worried about it. That's why I said I can't take any more. It's all I can do to handle this extra pain when I wake up in the night with my legs and my hands and arms, and it's excruciating. My morphine and my Dilaudid aren't cutting it with it at all. And then one night I couldn't step down on my left leg. The pain was so horrific. I had to try to get to the bathroom. And so, the person disabled's worried. Well, the family then, if they knew, or if they were around me more, it's overload. They've done all they could do. And then they've got these high pressure jobs. And it just takes them back to their little childhood where they were always worried. And then come home from school and we'd been broken into for the 6th time in 7 months, and policemen come and in their uniforms, and you've got to get out, and we think you're we were scared, and they were, and I had to just try to be brave or nonchalant and sell off stuff and find us a place to stay. And we drove around for a while I tried to get a grip and just cope with the reality that so much was gone, and violently so, just torn. The place was just torn up terribly. And then what am I going to do next? And I was supposed to be at work the next morning. Of course, I couldn't make it. Trying to find a place for us to stay, to live, after I farmed them out by 9:00 at night. Different, and that's just minor. We had so much. I think I've mentioned the window shot out when we were on the bed, and one night it was just always always traumas. And in our small hometown, we finally had some peace. Somebody was 2,200 miles away, and people weren't going to be hireable in my hometown to harass me. So, best he could do, he's got the child support lowered, of all things. So, anyway, we all have our stories. Some of us have had divorces. It's very hard at first. The rejection is painful. But being angry at our ex-spouses isn't going to change anything. The sooner we can come to forgiveness, the better. But as you can see, people can say, well, at least you have your children. Well, no, I don't. I don't have them. It's painful going through this. I could burst into tears right now. And it's been hard for me to accept and to realize that I cannot let them. I have to accept. One daughter's birthday is this Friday, and I'm not going to call her. She didn't call me on my birthday, and I think it's because my voice maybe upsets and brings a lot back. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And while they don't intend for me to be the cause of it, I am, even though they know rationally it wasn't my fault. But as little children, even my temper, when I would be in terrible pain and would get frustrated or worried about finances or crying when we'd have the harassment stuff and I'd have somebody that I was married to being so cruel to me, it would make me cry to think, how could someone hate that much? Someone that he loved and had 3 children with, beautiful children, all beautiful adults. So, it's a natural thing. And someday maybe they can get through it, I don't know, and cope. But in the meantime, my job is to stay clear. I'm sending a card and with some money in it, not much. I even thought about that. Maybe I shouldn't. But then I thought, in a way, maybe it's reparation or something. I don't know. But I also realized I had to forgive myself, which I talked about in the previous video. But I wanted to talk about disabled people and how we have to be the strong ones, even though we think we shouldn't have to be. And we have to understand other people do not understand, nor can they understand. I know right now, if I weren't disabled, and if I had had my life, I'd probably be in pickleball, old people's pro circuit, and doing book clubs, writing, or doing art, something like that. Remarried if I hadn't already been divorced. I wouldn't be out helping disabled people and saying, oh, I realize your children are surely burned out. And I've already mentioned this before. How many adults can even take care of their adult parents? Able-bodied adults take care of their adult parents for very long. They usually just put them in a nursing home or try it for a year or 6 months and can't hack it. The old hags can't take it. Reminds them of their childhood or something. And they didn't even have disabled parents when they were children. They had it good. Or if they didn't have it good even, then I can understand that even more. That it's hard to forgive things when you were a child and you don't understand it. And you're more sensitive when you're a child too. So my kids get a pass 40 years. Well, one of them 40, and the others have been trying. Son, maybe we'll give him 20. But but he had it tough. He had it tough when he was all alone. Was the only one there helping take care. So and it's embarrassing. Their mother had to lay down in the pew or lay down places we'd go or couldn't go, or I'd be late picking. He was upset I was late picking him up from his ball practice, and um, couldn't stand around like the other parents. I had to lay in the car with the seat back. Can't stand in one place for long, or I'd be too late up then to take care of him at all. So, and there was talk at one point among some of the people from church, the Lutheran church out there who did so much work, but isn't able to take care of her children. Something needs to be done. They should live with the father. Well, my family doctor knew the father. He put a squash to that real fast. But, no, we've all got to chip in more and help more. So, but those people burn it. They all have those adults, they burned out. We can't just throw it off to the family to handle it. And we can't blame it on the spouses, because not everyone's born with the, even if mine hadn't been a philanderer and a narcissist. Like I say, how many can stay married to a disabled person for years and years? Not many. I'll try to find some statistics. Especially when people marry and they aren't necessarily soulmates, and they don't share the same value of a marriage vow, and religion doesn't mean the same to them or whatever. We can't expect the church to take care of us. What can they do? They've got, everybody in every church has their own problems, their own families, their own stresses. Not with disabled people, they can't do anything because it's ongoing. We have to buck up, be understanding, be forgiving. And the proof of if you have forgiven someone is that it doesn't get to you anymore. You don't have any twinge of anger, and you're not blaming other people. Not blaming your kids for not, and you're not letting other people blame them either. I've let other people make those comments, and it's going to stop. I'm not going to let them. I'm going to lay out what my kids have done for me, because I needed to be reminded of all they've done and how it affected them. And that's why it is as it is now. And that's part of being disabled. It's part of the heavy cross. And I'm grateful to have an online support network who many of you are going through these very same things or can point out to me stuff. Somebody today even mentioned enzymes. Well, they're called Alzheimer's, but they're the same as digestive enzymes. And thankfully, I'm already on 3 different ones. And a 4th is the peptides for the stomach, for the intestinal nerve movement and all. So thank you. But thinking of me like that, how kind. We're a community, an anonymous community, but it's good, I think. I haven't, some couple people wanted to know where I am, and one even, bless the person's heart, wanted to come visit me. And I don't think I'm ready to do that. I don't know. I have to pray about it, because I think our anonymity is part of what makes it special in a way. It's like we're souls more than temporal. Doing the writing, the comments, we're more soul to each other than human, physical beings now, as when we're anonymous. So anyway, this is long and repetitive, but that's what I wanted to talk about, is the perspective on being disabled and the responsibility it is. And I have let it go because selfishly, I wanted my children to be close. I never wanted our adult years to be like this. I wanted to be close with my grandchildren. I wanted to have fun with them. And I always had excluded the hermit vocation. That was not going to get in the way of 3 children and grandchildren. Not that it would, but, as far as visiting, I would visit. And because I know of a couple hermits that they gave up children and grandchildren. I know one woman who did, who's in outside Atlanta or something. And her son agreed to it, and the grandchildren did. I think the son might talk to her every now and then or see her once a month or something. But no, God didn't lay on me that it had to be that extreme. I can love God and devote myself and still get a phone call now and then from my children or texts from my grandchildren, but I don't see. So, well, the one text, but I think a lot out of guilt and empathy. She's got a lot of compassion and is close by, so feels that responsibility and yet can't do it. Wants to, but then there I am, and it just comes rolling in on her, I think, subconsciously or even consciously. And I pick up, it's a horrible, sad situation, but it'll be better if we release and at least let them have the reins totally and not have expectations or let other people have expectations. They've done more than what they ever should have had to have done. And I'm grateful. And as far as the ex-husband, as I was laying in that hospital bed for 3 months with my parents there, we were all crammed into my little first house, which was teeny. Many were 6 of us, 3 adults and 3 children. And the children were active and running around, especially the little boy who was 4 then, to the surgery. And it was hard. My parents they were used to better accommodations, and the rug was dirty and worn, and my mom sort of a neat freak was, and that bothered her. She got very upset, seeing that dirt in the rug and germs, and she wasn't germ phobic or anything, but was on that side of both of them, like neat and tidy and peace and quiet. They were in their later 70s. It was hard, mid-70s at least, and and it was hard seeing their daughter laying there in the family room. The bed was put in the family room and took up about the whole room. But they squeezed in because that's where the TV. My dad had the TV set up so I could see it too, and they did a stellar job keeping the kids upbeat and positive, and me upbeat and hopeful, even though it was by the end of the 3 months, we were all getting the picture that I wasn't getting better. So, and I wouldn't be working, but we hadn't given up yet, but just about. Anyway, it was just, the thing with the ex-husband was, I thought, I would never want to be married in those circumstances. I realized how horrible would that be, to be maimed and disabled like that, unable to work, and be in a hospital bed, be laid up, and having my husband walking out and knowing that he was out with some other woman, or mistreating me, verbally mistreating me, putting me down, and then leaving. And I realized God knew what he was doing, having the husband leave early on, having him leave. And it was best for the children, even though we could think, no, that isn't. It's always good to have two parents, but depends. So we have to trust, us disabled people have to trust God, that if a spouse leaves us, that it's for the best. It's also for the best of the spouse. If they can't handle being with a disabled person, or they've done it for a few years and are burned out, it's not a good situation. If people can't handle it, they can't handle it. We've got to give grace and understanding and stop blaming. Forgive, forgive, forgive. And when we can't forgive, keep praying to forgive. Keep praying to forgive. And then I had lost sight of this, but even in the hospital with the surgery, I remember when I found out that I was one of the 10% that had bad surgery, didn't work out. I thought, well, I'm going to at least be one of the best of the 10%. I'm going to be a very good disabled person. Keep that thought. I'm renewing it in myself. Be the best disabled person we can be. The very best. And help other people. But even that, I wanted to be very good. Somebody told me about this Amy Carmichael, woman from the 1800s, I think, or early 1900s. She wrote letters to people about God and inspired them. And I tried writing it. Well, it didn't work for me. It isn't always going to work for us. We're not necessarily going to set the world on fire with our disability or our attempts to do well despite our disability. But we can try, and we've got to keep trying and be the very best victim soul of Jesus Christ we can be. Suffer it as well as we can suffer it. So that's my talk. That's my reality of what I had to realize. And so when this adult child wanted to help pay for the check fee, the canceled check fee, no, not going to have that. I think someone's here at the door, whatever, letting you go. And please add to any of you disabled people. I know a woman she had a terrible childhood upset. I don't think married, no children, I don't think. And that's a hard disability. But that could be a temptation. If you're single, you think, well, if only I had children. But remember, it doesn't always work out that way either. We've got to just buck up and know that more is expected of us. And pray for the strength to give more, and to be gracious about our situation. And the PT this morning felt so bad. I was, holding back tears over things. And he said, how about let's try traction? It's so good. Do practical things to get ourselves bucked up. That neck traction was a wonderful gift. It was like a practical encouragement. So hang in there, everyone. Hang in there. And I think maybe I need to start talking about victim souls and what I know about them. God has shared a lot about that with me. And yet, see, I'm weak. I forget. And we all get personally involved. We want our spouses to have stayed or to love us, or our children to, what was the word that the crabby mystic, you fawn over us? Obsequiousness, to really love us and take care of us and spoil us and all, and forget their own lives and their own problems and come take care of old mom after they've done it for 40 years. And listen to I'm hurting, my hands are hurting and stuff. I thought, why did I even say? I shouldn't have, why lay more on? So, people get tired of that too. It's hard on families. They don't want to hear and realize that there's more suffering. Well, everyone suffers. Okay, God bless His real presence in us, and we need to, all of us disabled people, rise up and claim our due, claim our spot of responsibility and nobility. We have worth and purpose, and we can't lose it in our self-concerns and feelings of rejection or that we've got it bad or whatever. And we cannot blame. Yeah, it does no good to blame unless we want to blame ourselves. Take a good hard look at ourselves and blame ourselves. All right, have a good evening. God bless you all.